My name is Neil Lester. I'm a professor here at ASU. I've been here for 20 plus years. As an English professor, I was given a charge and serving as a dean at the time to make humanities more robust. And for me, this was at the time that people were fleeing from humanities because people were asking the question, what can you do with a degree in humanities? And my response to that is, what can't you do with a degree in humanities? Because it feels foundational to me. But that's my own personal bias. What I want to give the author, Ibeh Agbanyim, is that close enough? Okay, Ibeh, an opportunity to talk about the book that has grown out of his experiences both inside industry and out. Let me tell you a little bit about him if you haven't already heard. He's a Harvard-trained leadership coaching strategist, an Amazon best-selling author, motivational speaker, psychology consultant in organizations, and the author of 3 books, The 5 Principles of Collaboration, which I read and blurred, and really see it as an accessible, very easy way to talk about there is no success without collaboration. Anybody who has achieved any level of success has not done that alone, no matter what people say. And now I understand why people thank everybody and their relatives when they get up to accept, because success really is about collaboration. So that's a wonderful book, The Power of Engagement and Now Fear. He has traveled internationally, lectured to various audiences. I think what I appreciate most about him, with all of his experience as he's working toward his PhD, is this humility that he has, this willingness to recognize a certain kind of humanness in everything that we do, and that everything is not about a bottom line, but rather about a foundation of a kind of shared experience. And then have a conversation about how, first of all, we define this new attitude toward fear, and then how do we get to the place where you want us to be by the time we've read this book. So if you'll join me in welcoming Ibeh up.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, I
sir.
appreciate it. Well, Dr. Lester, I would like to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I mean, like I always say, each time I have time to speak to a group of audience, it's always an honor. And the reason why I'm still doing what I'm doing as far as writing, consulting, it has everything to do because I have people that are listening, and people that care, and people that are interested in my work. So the easiest way or the shortest way to shut me down is not to show up anymore. If I write books, don't buy it. If I speak, don't listen to it. If I watch on YouTube and I see 0 on a YouTube video, it means I'm not relevant anymore. So I'm very grateful and humbled that each moment that I have to speak, I will have people around me to hear what I have to say, which means I'm making my own contributions in a little way that I can. So thank you so much for coming. And I promise you this evening you will enjoy the time that you spend with us, these 2 hours. And I'm very time conscious. I believe that every success is connected to how you manage your time. And this is one of them. So for you to take our time to be here, I am very grateful. Thank you so much. The reason behind writing a book titled Fear, it has a lot to do with my internal struggles. So as a researcher, I don't know any topic that a researcher ever researched without having any kind of background on that person that is researching. So this one was actually based on my own questions, my own internal questions, my struggles, my challenges, what I call the internal pharmacy, if you may say. If you are stressed and you're trying to calm yourself down, your internal pharmacy will take over, which means you start applying desired thinking or positive thinking to balance. Originally, I would like to put it in a broad perspective. Originally, I'm from Africa. Okay, the idea of coming to U.S. alone was a challenge. It wasn't a challenge so much about the financial aspect of it, but it was a challenge of the unknown. You don't know where, you don't know what the expectations can be a little bit illusional because you can't really explain it, but you know it's something right that you need to do. So I will start it from there. When I decided to come to this country, I asked myself some basic questions. Do I like where I am, or where I was, I should say? And the question kept coming back, no. In other words, I want to improve, I want to get better. And then I asked myself, how can I do that? How can I get better? By taking action, basically. Because I believe that action is the interpreter of our thoughts. The only way somebody can measure what you are thinking is by watching what you do. So when I was able to convince myself there is enough reason for me to leave, to come to America, then the next thing was to take action. And that action is what brought me to standing in front of many people now speaking. Again, thoughts without action is almost non-existence. So if you just want to find out if you are doing okay in your life, just look at what you are doing. Not what you are thinking, because thinking is not, it doesn't translate to action until you actually, it doesn't translate into substance until you apply some little bit of action. So when I got here, I asked myself, okay, now I'm here, I don't know, I can only count from my one finger how many people I know. And then the new challenge started, which is nobody can understand my accent. Nobody could understand me. Not because I wasn't speaking a proper English, but because the one that we studied back home was different from here. And which at some point it was irrelevant because the essence of communication is to be understood. So if you speak and nobody understands you, you have not made any point. So now I have to change my own internal struggle. Say, how will I get to a point where I will be understood? And I'm saying all these things to connect it that fear has been a propelling force behind every success, behind every move I've made behind every measurable move I've made in my life. Fear. And when I understand the reason why I have to find a way to translate what I know to where people can understand it, that was when my success began. I realized that in order for me to succeed, I have to integrate, I have to interact with the elements of the environment I find myself. And what I mean by elements is the people, basically. It doesn't matter what race or what color, what gender. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is to survive and to succeed and to thrive. So I realized that it's time for me to, if I may use the language, mingle. Mingle and find out what it is that I need to do to be successful. And in the process of doing that, in that journey, I started questioning myself again that I live in a society where technology, education is everything. I came here with minimal education. And I realized that if I don't improve myself, I will be just as worse or as bad as I was from where I left. So again, the internal communication that I had was actually what helped me a whole lot. Again, the fear of not staying not staying where I was what compelled me or propelled me to do something different. So I started thinking about education, about school. How can I go about doing that? Needless to say that I had a friend who studied aerospace and mechanical engineering, PhD. While I was still thinking about doing that, going back to school, that, my friend, was the reason why I went back to school. Because when I met him, he only had an associate degree. And somehow he kept climbing. He got his bachelor's, he got his master's. But the wake-up call came when I went to his graduation. And I realized that it was over 500 students, undergraduate students, graduating for that year in his department. And then all of a sudden it shrunk to, 20, 25, 50 master's degree holders. And then when it came down to PhD, there were only 5 of them. And out of those 5, 3 were all international students or foreigners. So after that experience, I said to myself, if this guy can do it, I can do it too. So that was the reason why I went back to school, and I went straight to school and tell them this is what I want to do. And I realized that the moment you confront your fear, all of a sudden the fear will start to disappear. It's just like driving a car. You can only see so far. And the closer you get, the wider you see. So I'm saying this to suggest to you that when I actually sat down to do the inventory of how I'm doing, I realized that fear has been a pivotal ingredient in everything that I do. When I decided to write a book, my first book, I was once told by a professor, it was very insulting to me when he wrote a letter, he wrote and accused me of being an international student. He said my writing was very poor. So I brought it up to him and said, I'm not an international student, by the way. I'm a citizen of this country, just like anybody else. So when you put me on the international class, means it's a whole new different way of looking. So I challenged him from what he told me about in every 1,000 words that you write, you're supposed to make only 3 mistakes, 3 errors. So that forced me to go back to APA manual to say, is this guy correct or what? So when I went back and almost read through the entire APA manual, 5th edition, there was nothing that suggested 3 errors out of 1,000 words. So I wrote back to him and said, sir, I know you are my prof, but I don't think you are right in this one. So show me where is it in the book. And he responded with 250 words. So out of that 250 words, he made 3 mistakes. So I said, wait a minute. You're asking me to do what you can't even keep up with. So I wrote back to him and told him that. Needless to say that he apologized, and of course the school apologized. But I'm saying all these things to suggest to you that if I wouldn't have taken a position, I wouldn't have learned that even though he was my professor, he can also be wrong. Because nobody is immune to mistakes. And it took courage for me to actually write back to him. Because I was wondering what would happen if you confront your professor. He might destroy me. But no, the opposite was there. So needless to say, today he's one of my best friends. If I need something, I write him 1 sentence, and then he will be very kindly to respond. So basically, he pulled the best out of me by challenging me, even though his approach was a little bit, it wasn't the best approach. So when I started writing, when I wrote my first book, The Power of the Power of Engagement, that book was birthed out of fear of what the professor told me. Is it possible that I can't write? But I said, no, let me put everything in print, and then ask myself that question later. So I started dumping all my thoughts in print. Needless to say that when I submitted that to an editor, they wrote me back and they were very pleased with the content of mine. So that aspect of me was squashed, because I always believe what Vincent van Gogh said, that if you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, by all means, paint, and that voice will be silenced. So I came to a realization that whenever I'm afraid of something, that very thing is what I really love to do again. All of a sudden, that's my favorite thing to do. And each time I jump in it, each time I jump in any project, I only see success when I overcome that fear. So I coined it constructive fear versus destructive fear. Constructive fear, in my opinion, is whenever I confront a problem and I'm able to solve that problem and make an improvement from that problem. For me, that's a constructive fear. Destructive fear is going to school and being worried if I can pass the exam. And the moment I give up from studying, and sure enough, you fail the exam, that's an evidence of destructive fear. So when I wrote the book Fear, I was actually talking to myself. But out of my own curiosity, as a researcher, I went back to find out, to see what data has to say. And if you have time to read the book, you will see that I did a lot of research and what they call evidence-based research. It wasn't just somebody on the street throwing out something, but actually a peer-reviewed articles. So again, when I decided to, I have a job now that I've been with for over, logistics company, for over 19 years now. And it took a lot of courage for me to stay in one company for that long. And this is a company that I've known, working inside, that their entry level is very high on turnover. And I kept asking myself, why are people quitting that high? But on the other end, I asked myself, why are some people staying? What is it about people that are staying? So I started researching and finding out. So what I found out was that people are very quick to make hasty decisions, without what fear, like we know, is what is called, it's a memorized emotion, basically. Memorized emotion is what you are used to, okay? The emotion that you're used to feeling. When something comes up, it's easy for you to fall back to that memorized emotion. And I think fear is a memorized emotion because we have already, it's established and confirmed that fear is destructive, fear is negative. When you hear fear, the first thing you hear is, it's not good. And then you start preparing for a way to run. So my challenge was, how can I challenge this, my memorized emotion? Something that I've known all my life that is not good. And I started to dig deeper. I realized that when we were growing up, or when I was growing up, I remember more don'ts. Don't do this. Don't crawl here. Don't jump here. Don't fall here. Don't go here. Don't associate with these people. Don't do this. And unfortunately, that memorized emotion, you start internalizing the don'ts as opposed to the do's. So when I realized that fear is a memorized emotion, and the memorized emotion I have about fear is that it's not good. So I asked myself, how will I reverse the case? And I started thinking of things that I have done that I was successful. And every single one of them has to do with fear. So in the process of writing this book, I rediscovered myself. And the book has gained enough, should I say enough attention. People have started, actually somebody challenged the idea. One of the professors, he told me that fear can never be a healthy emotion. So I asked him, okay, if that's the case, how come when you teach your students, do you expect them to fail or do you expect them to pass? He said, I expect them to pass. So what do you do for them to pass? How do you teach that help them pass? And then he started saying, well, I prepare this, that, I gave them this, that. So is it possible that you are afraid that they will fail? That's why you're giving them enough materials, that way they can study and pass. If you think they can easily pass, why are you wasting your time staying up late trying to teach them? And then when we go through the roles and give him examples after example, is it possible that, are you married? He say yes. Is it possible that you please your spouse because you don't want to be the part of the statistics? Are you living your life just the way you want it, or are you accommodating your spouse? He said, well, it takes two. I said, no, but in your own end, you are doing your part. That way, the marriage doesn't fall apart. He said, yeah. So I kept giving him examples after example. When you see a child in danger, what do? He said, I will rush to help. Isn't that a good help? Isn't that a good fear? That if you don't help this child, he will hurt himself. That's a healthy fear. That's a constructive fear. So by the time I went through the whole process, he said, okay. Okay, you got me. So he ended up buying about 50 copies of the book. And needless to say, he shared it with his students. And they actually, do like a discussion out of that book. So I'm here to tell you that what we know, is it possible that what we know is based on our limited knowledge? It's just a question. Is it possible that what we know is based on our limited knowledge? It's not the only way to see, but it's the only way you have exposed yourself to. I was flying one time from France back to US, and I was sitting next to a young lady. And the lady was coming here for her first time, and she happens to be a Muslim. So along the conversation, I asked her a question, because she said she seriously believes in her religion. I said, yes, I believe in mine too. But have we actually taken time to accommodate one another, instead of trying to convert you to become a Christian, or you trying to convert me to become a Muslim? Is it possible that I'm a Christian because I was raised in that family? Is it possible? I'm not saying, is it possible that I hold on to my beliefs because that's what I've been exposed to all my life? So I do whatever it takes to protect it, because it's easier, it's convenient for me to protect it than to look for a new way to think. So needless to say, when we got out of the plane, she wrote me an email and said, I never thought about it from that way. Which means her way is not the only way. Her way of practice is not the only way. My way of practice is not the only way, which is what Humanity 101 is all about. The ability to create an environment where all of us can grow. Because my last book suggested that no one is an island. Everybody is connected to one another. I don't care how you look at it. I've traveled extensively, and human beings want the same thing. Everybody wants safety. I don't care whether you live in the forgotten corner of Africa or you live in Mobile, Alabama. I don't care where you live. The human need, what Abraham Maslow called the hierarchy of needs, is the same. You need shelter, you need protection, you need emotional stability. So if I can go back to fear, I can tell you that the reason why we're having this meeting is just to suggest to you that to think again. The way we view fear is not the only way it is. There's another way to look at it, which is what I call constructive fear. I can go on and on and on, examples after examples, but I don't want to bore you with lectures here. But please allow me to have a seat, and then we can continue this dialogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to invite Mr. Aurora up.